Her name was Dorothy. She raised 3 children, buried a husband, and lived through a war, and never once took a pill to calm down. Today, 1 in 4 American adults reports feeling anxious most days. Dorothy never heard the word anxiety used about herself, not because she didn't feel fear, because fear never became a permanent resident in her body. Her granddaughter asked her once, late in her life, how she got through everything she got through without falling apart. Dorothy looked confused by the question. She said, "I didn't get through it without feeling it. I just didn't carry it around with me afterward." Her granddaughter has spent 4 years and several $1,000s in therapy trying to learn exactly that. What Dorothy had were 10 habits so ordinary she never thought of them as managing her nervous system. She would not have understood that phrase. Nobody on her street called them anything either, because every woman on that street had them. She had no anti-anxiety prescription refilled every 30 days, no meditation app sending her reminders, no wellness influencer teaching her nervous system regulation as a paid course, no $5 matcha latte marketed as a cortisol-lowering ritual. What she had were 10 habits. The habits were the part nobody sold her, because the habits were the part that actually worked. Then something changed. Not the human nervous system, not what a person actually needs to stay calm in an uncertain world. What changed is exactly what this video is about. Before number 10, subscribe. This channel exists to tell you exactly this kind of story every week. Mokwezend. Number 10. Dorothy finished what she started before she let herself worry about what came next. If she was halfway through canning vegetables when bad news arrived, she finished the jars before she sat down with the news. Not from coldness, from a learned instinct that an unfinished task left dangling makes anxiety worse, not better. Behavioral psychologists call this task completion bias, the discovery that the human mind treats unfinished actions as a low-grade, ongoing alarm, regardless of what else is happening. Dorothy never read about the Zeigarnik effect. She simply knew that a half-canned shelf of vegetables made the whole kitchen feel unsettled, and a finished one didn't. The productivity app industry now sells task closure techniques for $9 a month that Dorothy practiced for free by simply finishing what was in front of her. Dorothy never had the product. Dorothy never had the problem either. Number 9. Dorothy never read the news more than once a day. At 6 in the evening she listened to the radio report. That was the day's information. She did not return to it at 9. She did not wonder what had changed in the 3 hours since. Research from the American Psychological Association has consistently found that repeated exposure to news updates, far from making people better informed, primarily increases anxiety without proportionally increasing useful knowledge. Dorothy's single daily dose of news was not a discipline she named. It was simply the only news available, once at 6 o'clock, and then the radio was off. Dorothy never had the product. Dorothy never had the problem either. We are not far from number 1. The habit and entire wellness industry was eventually built to repackage and sell back to you. Stay with me. Number 8. Dorothy moved her body every single day, regardless of how she felt. Not exercise in the modern sense, walking to the market, hanging laundry, sweeping the porch. Worry, in her house, was never allowed to keep a body still for long. A landmark study from Harvard Medical School found that physical movement reduces circulating stress hormones within minutes, and that the effect is strongest precisely when a person feels too anxious to want to move at all. Dorothy never knew the word cortisol. She knew that sitting still with a worry only made the worry louder. Dorothy never had the product. Dorothy never had the problem either. Number 7. Number 7. Dorothy said her worries out loud to one trusted person, and then stopped saying them. She told her husband, once, clearly, what was troubling her. She did not repeat it to 5 other people. She did not replay it in her own head on a loop for days. One telling. Then she let the matter rest in someone else's awareness besides her own. Psychologists call uncontrolled, repeated mental replay of a worry rumination, and it is now understood to be one of the strongest predictors of chronic anxiety disorders. Dorothy's single telling, once, to Walter, was a release valve modern anxiety rarely gets the chance to use. Dorothy never had the product. Dorothy never had the problem either. Nini Wanambir, number 6. Dorothy kept her hands working during anything frightening, waiting for a doctor's diagnosis, waiting for news from overseas during the war. She did not sit with empty hands staring at a clock. She mended, she kneaded, she knitted, she swept. Occupational therapists have found that repetitive manual tasks engage the same neural pathways used in modern anxiety treatments like EMDR and bilateral stimulation, providing measurable nervous system regulation without anyone needing to call it therapy. Dorothy's mending basket was, in a clinical sense, treatment. She called it mending. Dorothy never had the product. Dorothy never had the problem either. We are almost at number 1, the single habit the multi-billion-dollar wellness industry was built to make you forget you already had. Almost there. Min stilanda. Mama min. Darmtgranias 5. Dorothy went to bed at the same time regardless of what the day had held. A hard day did not earn her a later bedtime spent staring at the ceiling or distracting herself. 9:45 remained 9:45, whether the day had been ordinary or terrible. Sleep researchers have found that maintaining a fixed sleep schedule during high-stress periods significantly reduces the likelihood that acute stress develops into a chronic anxiety pattern, because the body's stress recovery systems depend on regularity precisely when it feels hardest to provide it. Dorothy never knew this research existed. She simply went to bed. Dorothy never had the product. Dorothy never had the problem either. Number 4. Number 4. Dorothy never made a decision while she was upset. If something frightened or angered her, she waited, sometimes an hour, sometimes a day. She did not write the letter, make the phone call, or decide the outcome while her hands were still shaking. Behavioral economists have identified affect-driven decision-making, choices made during acute emotional states, as significantly less accurate and more regretted than decisions made even a few hours later, once the nervous system has settled. Dorothy's mother had told her once, "Never decide anything while your hands are still shaking." Dorothy never had the product. Dorothy never had the problem either. Number 3. Number 3. Dorothy spent time outside in natural light every single day, regardless of weather. She did not wait for sunshine to step outside. Rain, cold, or heat, she found 10 minutes outdoors every day, without exception. Research published in Frontiers in Psychology has found that daily outdoor light exposure, independent of weather or temperature, is one of the strongest non-pharmaceutical predictors of lower anxiety symptoms through its regulation of circadian-linked stress hormones. Dorothy never knew the word circadian. She knew that staying inside all day made her feel worse, and going out, even briefly, made her feel better. Dorothy never had the product. Dorothy never had the problem either. Number 2. Inidaminith senol, ding sumin, ding some beaten. Dorothy named her worries specifically, instead of feeling generally afraid. She did not say, "I have a bad feeling." She said, "I'm worried about the rent payment on the 14th. I'm worried about James's cough lasting this long." Vague dread, in her house, was always converted into a specific, nameable concern. Clinical psychologists call this worry specification and have found that converting diffuse anxiety into concrete, nameable concerns significantly reduces the physiological intensity of the anxiety response, because the brain can begin problem-solving a specific concern in a way it cannot with vague dread. Dorothy's mother had told her, "Nothing is as frightening once you can say exactly what it is." Dorothy never had the product. Dorothy never had the problem either. Number 1. Dorothy believed that fear was a visitor, not a resident. This is the one the entire wellness industry has never managed to bottle, because it isn't a technique, it's a belief about what fear is actually for. Dorothy did not believe a frightening feeling meant something was permanently wrong with her, or with her life, or with her nervous system. She believed fear arrived when something needed her attention, did its job, and was supposed to leave once the matter was handled. She let herself feel afraid completely, for as long as the feeling lasted. She did not extend its stay by analyzing it, fighting it, or building an identity around having it. She never had a therapist explain the nervous system to her as a concept she needed to manage for the rest of her life. She never had an app tracking her anxiety levels day over day, implicitly teaching her to expect them. She had a mother who told her once, "Fear is just your body asking you to pay attention, and it will leave." The modern anxiety treatment industry, medication, apps, retreats, coaching, is now worth over $20 billion, much of it built on the premise that anxiety is a permanent condition to be managed, rather than a temporary visitor to be heard and released. Dorothy never had the product. Dorothy never had the problem either. Dorothy passed away in 1996. She was 79 years old. Her granddaughter, going through her things, found no journal of anxious thoughts, no half-finished self-help book, no evidence anywhere that Dorothy had spent her life managing a nervous system she was taught to see as fragile. She found a mending basket, a radio, a walking path worn into the grass behind the house. Nobody at her funeral described her as someone who had overcome anxiety. They described her as someone who had simply never seemed to carry very much of it. 10 habits Dorothy never named, never wrote in a book, and never once thought to call a calming practice. She simply called it getting on with the day. What changed between how Dorothy's body handled fear and how yours handles it today was not what a human nervous system actually needs to recover from stress. Those needs have not changed since 1950. What changed was who got paid when that need was repackaged into a $20 billion industry built on the promise that you will need it forever. Pick one thing from this list. Come back in the comments in a week and tell me what it did. If you've ever felt like fear moved in and never left, tell me below. I read every single comment. The next video is already waiting.